Band was like being on a professional football player or something. You had to ramp up for the gig. You had to be able to perform at a really high level every night.
All right, on 4 records.
Yeah, only pressure on one of them. But the one's the new Eskimo Brothers, so that's got the most pressure on it. But I've got an older band I was in, it's a rootsy kind of band called This Train. We're doing a new record. We haven't done one in over 20 years. I've got a little kind of art punk band called Prayer Flags that are working on a new record right now. I've got an electronic thing I do called The Snipe Catcher that I'm putting together another new record on them.
That's something I'm very interested in hearing.
You say that now.
I do say that now.
It's pretty weird. It's pretty weird music.
Cool.
But I like it. But then I think pretty soon we have to start. I don't know if you're familiar with Adrian and Meredith.
I'm not.
Oh, it's a couple. They're very sort of Americana, but they have a lot of Eastern European influence.
Yeah.
I produced their last 2 records, and we're supposed to start the new one. It's real fun stuff. She plays violin, he sings and plays acoustic, and they use a lot of horns, but not a lot of electric instruments. But yeah, they've been touring Europe a lot, and they just did a duo tour of probably 5 countries in Europe, and they did a whole West Coast run they just came home from, like 2.5 month tour.
You've been spending just as much time in the studio as you have on stage?
Well, probably more, but the way the Eskimo Brothers tour in the fall and winter is they just slow down and go out on the weekends, and then we just play like 1 gig in town locally, or I only play 1 gig in town locally with David, and he plays twice a week with Joe Fick.
Cool.
And I play with Derek. I play with Derek Hoke on one of those nights, and Derek, and just played with Mark Cawley, and recently a country artist. Yeah, I'm keeping pretty busy. I'm still keeping pretty busy. It's good.
You still building amps these days too?
I haven't done that in probably going on 3 years. But I just kind of burned out on it, and there's no money in it. I really enjoyed it. A couple of my distribution deals were getting difficult too, so I just kind of I'm just going to lay this down for a while. Then post-COVID, getting parts.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'd have to charge double for the cabinets now just to make the same money.
Oh yeah, I can.
You know what I mean? So you gotta just to make what I was making in the first place. So that's a little tricky.
For anyone that's listening that doesn't know, Mark built the bass amp that is all over the records that you heard, and every time that you saw me play live. So that was his doing.
It was a fun, glorified hobby. I dug in pretty deep at one time, but
I'll never have a better bass amp. I'm sorry, I won't.
That's funny. Before I talked to you, I got off the phone with Dave Green, the guy who did the design work on that stuff.
I haven't spoken to him in so long.
Yeah, he's still a total weirdo.
Cool.
And great guy.
Yeah.
But he wanted to chat about something. He didn't know I was in Europe at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of said it has to wait because I only get to see Vitsco, every 6 weeks if I'm lucky,
Right. I've seen you've been playing a lot of electric bass as well as upright bass. Have you just found?
Yeah.
Have you just found that certain things match certain things just better, and sometimes the electric bass is a better sound for what you're doing? Yeah,
I mean, like on certain grooves, if you want longer notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally.
Or it's just a different approach, but
yeah.
I would hate to be stuck on just one of them forever. You know, it's nice to do both.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I agree. God, I have trouble just sticking to one instrument.
Yeah, exactly.
So, when I first became aware of your musicianship, as a budding upright bass player and a fan of the ShackShakers and that kind of thing, I just was completely blown away by, everything that you were putting out there. And it was a huge inspiration. And I'm curious, before you got to that point, like, what were some of the, the earlier bands that you were rocking out in?
Well, I had this little band called This Train that made like 4 records, and we actually did pretty well. Yeah. It was just a trio, and it wasn't quite as weird as ShackShakers, but it was quirky. And I did a lot of just whatever kind of paid the bills. Between my fun projects, I did some contemporary Christian music, and that paid really well, and I had some great experiences with some great people. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of like more into something a little more punk rock at heart. Punk rock, and I like roots music a lot. Somewhere in the early 90s, I just went off the deep end for wanting to learn upright bass and get into roots music. So I played some punk rock on electric bass and rock and roll stuff, and then I played Bob Wills and Willie Dixon type stuff on upright.
Yeah,
it was the ShackShakers. The ShackShakers were the first thing where I went like, well, I guess I could just try to do both on upright.
Yeah.
Try and combine the things. I mean, part of it is probably a cliche story, but I was well into it, playing upright and making a living playing upright and electric, but I kind of separated them out by genre. But then I saw Horton Heat, and Jimbo did everything on upright, and I thought, well, then why not just stay on upright? It's easier. So I did, and also JD Wilkes, he's just not a huge fan of electric bass. If you listen to ShackShakers records, there's electric bass here and there. I mean, only one time did JD actually, he bought a bass like at a yard sale, and it sounded awful, but in a really perfect kind of way. So he told me I had to play this on this one ShackShakers tune on, I think it was on the Believe record. It's a song called Piss and Vinegar. And the bass just sounds like it's about to blow up, and every time what you can't hear from the finished product is, if I had to go to the next chord, I had to stop and retune the bass to be in tune for the next chord. And just punch it in until we got it all in. But I love this. One of my favorite bass sounds in a way that I've ever gotten, just because it was so difficult. I've since over the years bought basses at pawn shops and tried to find the perfect crappy bass. I've never found anything that quite does what that one does, but
there's something about finding an instrument that has that perfectly ratty ass tone, It's going to fit outside the box and give you exactly what you're looking for. But in any other medium, you'd be like, I would never use this thing because it's making it makes Link Ray's tone sound like Steely Dan. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, totally. You just have to find the right thing. For guitar stuff, I've got a bunch of nice guitars, and I don't prefer crappy instruments over good ones, I just prefer what works in a track today,
Yeah.
And whatever that might be. But I primarily, when I have been writing the This Train stuff and the Prayer Flag stuff, I use a 62 Silvertone Bobcat, and it's got those old gold foil pickups, and man, it's a little harder to play. It's a little jankier, but it's just got so much character.
The mojo is the payoff.
That I just, yeah. And I've always been a big fan of, Dex Romweber, and he plays those those old silver tones.
Oh yeah.
And even the guitar player we had toward the end of my time in the ShackShakers was a guy named Rod Hamdallah, and he played a Bobcat, and or something similar, a Stratotone or something, same ballpark as what I have, and I always thought he had a nice sound, kind of slightly dark,
Yeah, totally. Growing up, you said that you were playing punk and stuff. Was punk like the first genre that you picked up? Were you playing guitar? Or were you playing bass?
Well, I started out on classical guitar.
Oh wow, cool.
And I wasn't that big. Well, yeah, except I never got any good at it. I practiced like crazy, but I was just like mediocre.
Right.
And but my teacher was also a friend of mine. And he was trying to kind of get me good enough to start a band together. And he wanted to do like prog rock. And so which was good for me as a kid because you had to practice really hard. And then I just played in other bands doing like Ramones type music because that's what I got the most out of. But I played with this other guy just to learn. But the point is, as we started to put together a band, there was like 3 guitar players in the band, and the keyboard player was using his left hand to do the bass.
Yeah, it's like Ray Manzarek.
So he was doing that, but then the band were like, somebody should just play bass, And everybody kind of looked at me because I was the worst guitar player. And I got a bass. I never took it as a step down. The second I started playing bass, I thought, I really relate to this more. I think I found my real medium here.
From myself, I started off on guitar, and then when I picked up bass too, I had the same feeling as you. It's I seem to be connecting a little more with this right now, just because not only everybody needs a bass player, and I was jamming with just like some old dudes playing classic rock covers, but you start to see how music works on the guitar. Yeah,
totally. I think each one helps the other,
Yeah.
I think had I not spent so much, I'm pretty good at walking and voicing a chord well,
mm-hmm.
and I can hear what a guitar player is doing and do the right sort of leading tones, and I think guitar made that easier.
Oh, I 100% agree.
Having a guitar background made that easier.
Yeah, I agree. I know when I'm playing lead guitar, sometimes I literally think of, aside from if I'm doing an actual lick, when it comes to the way that I'm connecting my arpeggios, I'm playing bass when I'm playing lead guitar.
I still, to this minute, I don't really consider myself a guitar player, but I've played guitar on a bunch of records. I will if there's nobody else around and a part needs to be come up with. But that sort of Yep Rock era of the ShackShakers, where we did 3 records in a row for them, which was Believe, Pandalirium, and Swamp Blood.
All 3 so good.
And in that band, I played almost all the guitar on those records. David Lee wasn't terribly good in the studio, so while he was in the band, he just had me play guitar on most of it.
Oh, right on. I think that that's a gem that anybody that's listening to this would be interested to know.
Yeah, JD's always been really into my guitar. After I left the ShackShakers, he asked me to come back like a couple of years later. He said, "Would you come back to the band, but as the guitar player?" And I was, well, no, I won't. I'm not a guitar player. I own guitars, and I can come up with good things, but it's just not where my heart is as a musician, like on stage especially. I really enjoy bass. Fits my personality better.
Especially when it comes to upright, you get into that zone where you know exactly where all the notes are on your bass without having to look. You play strictly by feeling, and that's something that you can't really do a whole lot on guitar, because if you miss one note, you miss one note. Whereas with us upright bass players, we know that certain arpeggios, especially when played on open strings, are going to work every time.
Yeah. I mean, I think another huge reason I don't think I could have played guitar with the ShackShakers was when I left the band, the guy that got to play bass, I love his bass playing. You know, he's really good at like old time hot jazz.
Fuller Condon?
Yeah. Like I love Two Man Gentleman Band.
Well, I've seen Fuller play with the Gentlemen, and I've seen Fuller play with the ShackShakers. And I think he held his own, given the training and I suppose music that he came from prior to go on stage with a group of madmen. I think that he held his own.
Oh yeah, no, he's not afraid. Yeah,
yeah. And now Thomas is working with him.
Yeah, you know, Thomas is who I recommended in the first place when I left.
Thomas.
That's who I told JD to get in the first place because Thomas is a badass.
Yeah, Thomas taught me my very first slap at a Kings of Nothing gig. After the gig, I had questions and he gave me answers.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's great, man. And there's still a chance. It hasn't timed out, but I'm supposed to do some ShackShakers gigs, but it just hasn't timed out for me to do them yet. Like now that David Lee's back, we were talking about maybe even getting Brett Whitaker on a couple of gigs and just going down memory lane a little bit. We haven't been able to do it yet.
Well, you've been also playing, doing the Eskimo Brothers thing for a hot minute now.
Yeah, I have. And it's been a really steady, fun gig.
It looks like a fun band to be in.
Yeah, I like, there's things about them I really like. Well, like one, we've never had a rehearsal.
That's cool.
The singer just doesn't like to do that. He just does what he feels like every night.
All right.
We don't do set lists. He doesn't do set lists. So he needs players that can react quickly, you know.
Gotcha.
But honestly, since the ShackShakers really were, JD improvised an awful lot, so I was pretty prepared for that. You know, if JD decided to make a verse longer or shorter or go to a different section altogether, I was pretty prepared for that. No, I was saying I have a pretty decent ear, and the Eskimo Brothers are a little more straight ahead than the ShackShakers as far as roots country kind of thing goes.
Yeah.
So, in like a really good country song, I'm sure you know this, you can guess what the chords are going to be, and most of the time you're right.
Yeah.
Like the melody kind of tells you where to go.
Well, that was one of the things that always like blew my mind when I did listen to the ShackShakers is I was like with every song, because like, one of the things I try to do with my writing, because I was very inspired by y'all, is every song is different than the last one. And I would always think as I was listening, and I was like, how many arrangements do they have to remember? Oh my God.
Well, that was a deceptively difficult band to be in.
I believe it.
I think JD made it look really easy, but we had a hard time finding the right players and keeping them because it was a pretty demanding gig. And we weren't easy on anyone about it. That band was like being on a professional football player or something. You had to ramp up for the gig. You had to be able to perform at a really high level every night. Yeah.
Yeah. You need your sleep. You need a breakfast. You might need to do, a half a lap outside the venue to get the blood flowing.
No, totally. It was a very demanding. Eskimo Brothers was similar. He's a really demanding guy, but in a way that I'm grateful for.
I love working with band leaders that push you to be better than you are, and because of the amount of experience that they have. But there's also, I've had my experience with band leaders who show you what not to be.
Oh, of course. There's a lot of, I won't name them, but I've been in situations with people who they just really aren't quite good enough, but they were smart enough to get a good band. they don't realize that they're the weak link, or maybe they do.
I think perhaps the front man relies on the fact that it's their name on the marquee that the record label's pushing, and that it's your job to make them look good because they're the ones paying you. And I completely understand that dynamic, but there's also has to be some give and take when it comes to respect.
Yeah, exactly. But it's been a fun ride so far. I'm almost positive the plan is that I'm going to play on and produce the next ShackShakers record.
Oh, rad!
So we're going to try and get it back to being a little more rock and roll again. A little more eccentric.
Fuck yeah! You're gonna play guitar on that?
JD, probably a little.
Right on.
And I'll do all the bass,
Mm-hmm.
My hope is he's really hard to get now, but the drummer that we had for the longest period of time was a fella named Brett Whitaker. And I really, really want him to be involved. But he's got a couple of kids now, and he's a really successful mural artist in Chicago.
Okay.
So it's hard to get him to play.
When you have those comforts of home, sometimes the idea of a hotel room doesn't seem that appetizing. But then, you start getting that wanderlust, and you start missing just those hours looking out the window and just seeing the scenery change and all the jokes inside of the van. And I don't think there's a lot of people that understand exactly the inside of a van, how it's its own environment, and it's got its own language, it's got its own jokes, and man, I hope that he ends up going out with you, because if that's who you're recommending, then I can't wait.
Well, I want him to at least do the record, and they've got this kid from Florida, really young guy, playing drums now, and I've kind of watched their progress since David Lee's been back in the band. I mean, I talk to them at least 2 or 3 times a week, and kind of cheerlead them from the sideline, and they're making noticeable improvements, and this young drummer is really coming along, and Thomas is coming into his own. As a shack shaker. Yeah,
I imagine that he's just excited to take on that material, because I can't wait to have him on here and get to talk to him about some stuff, because like I said, he taught me my first slap. So
he's a bad boy. He's such a great guy, but he's doing a good job. They sent me tapes of a couple of early shows and asked what I thought and what, and I gave them a little bit of advice on the rhythm section part of it. And it seems like they took it to heart, because the last videos I saw was much more what I like, at least, and what I think JD responds well to, because that's the whole thing, is, building up the right playground for JD.
Right. It's all has to be there, and that's why he can make it look so easy, is because everything is happening so tight in the back. Yeah,
I think it's hard to tell a great player to not be so great. And just go like, no, man, just play really heavy and a little wider and deeper, and that gives JD a more solid thing to stand on, Once he starts kind of elevating his thing, then you elevate yours around it. So it works better that way to me.
Yeah, I imagine it's like shifting a car.
Maybe.
Like the show first starts off. Well, actually, there's no first gear to the ShackShakers. The first song starts off in 3rd gear. You're already there.
Well, sometimes, yeah, on a good night.
Man, I just absolutely will never forget just getting to see the carnage that was y'all, and me being like, okay, I'm gonna steal that from the bass player, and I'm gonna steal that from the bass player, and
no, it's all good. It's all good. So, hey, where are you living now?
I live in Saarland in Germany. I live on the border of France and Germany.
Are you shitting me?
No.
How did I not know that?
I'm not sure, but anyway, yeah, this is.
I knew you were overseas a lot, but I didn't know you lived there.
Yeah, I married an amazing German.
Oh wow! So are you like kind of up near like Strasbourg or?
I'm right on the border of France and Germany. The closest thing to us, big city-wise, would be Mannheim, but also, I mean, Saarbrücken is a decent-sized city.
Crazy.
It's cool because we have the German and French cooking influences simultaneously.
Yeah. Where we are right now is we can probably get to Cologne in I don't know, an hour.
Oh wow, that's cool. It's like a 3-hour drive to Cologne from where I'm at.
Yeah. She's in a village called Beneden-Leeuwen, which is just a little bit outside of Nijmegen. It's killer. It's an amazing little village. It's small and that feels kind of cool, and it feels kind of Dutch, you know. But we walked to the market to get some ingredients for dinner tonight or whatever, and we were there in 2 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
And there's an incredible river, like just really we can walk to it in 2 or 3 minutes, and you can, you know. I've always liked the Netherlands. I mean, I could easily live here, but
I enjoyed playing there.
Yeah, they're playing in Holland is always awesome. It's just I think it's a friendly country in general. People are nice. The language is kind of difficult to learn, and they understand that, so they all speak really good English, so that helps.
I get the same, although I've been able to pick up the German language enough to get my A2 certification. Whenever Germans hear my, I guess, American accent, they go to English, not only because they're nice, but also apparently they're excited to get to use it.
Yeah, I get that sometimes here too. I'm studying Dutch, and I'm pretty terrible at it so far, but I'm trying. It's proving a little difficult, but I mean, eventually I gotta figure it out, you know.
Oh yeah, you got to pull out the Duolingo app. It's something else.
I've heard about that one. I haven't used it yet. I've been using Babbel. So I like being here as often as I can be here, you know, and
if you end up over this way more, we're going to have to maybe make some music together. Yeah, man, just keep me in the loop, and we'll talk turkey and see what's going on. One of the things that I've been able to do since I've been chatting with everybody is during COVID, when everybody had everything kind of freeze on them as far as the gigging world goes, I was just curious if there was anything that you picked up in not only as I guess an artistic medium, but maybe any other way to spend the time than being on stage.
At first I got lucky. First, Eskimo Brothers is a good paying gig, so I had decent savings, but I almost immediately I mixed 2 or 3 records, and then I got sessions playing on people's records, but like remotely, you know, where you record from home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's when I went off the deep end for. I've been into electronic music my whole life, but it's more of a closeted sort of thing. I got really into modular synthesis, and making my own patches and things like that.
Yeah.
And I got kind of obsessed over that.
Cool.
And during COVID, made a couple of unlistenable, noisy, weird records, and I enjoy them. They're fun.
You're going to have to send them to me because I want to hear that because I want to hear that sort of you call unlistenable noise.
I'll send you a couple of. I have one of the 3 records I put out with that. I have one that's kind of like almost accessible. Yeah, when we get off the phone, I'll send you some links.
That sounds great.
But it's just a fun hobby. It's just I've done it off and on for years, and I've gotten some music in in small films and commercials.
Right.
But nobody who knows what I do in a mainstream way even knows I do it. So they're like, why are you messing with this all of a sudden? But it's actually not all of a sudden at all.
If you're into any sort of hard music, it was really, really difficult to not get into industrial because it's cool stuff. And the more that I get to talk to more people who play roots type music that are like, oh yeah, I absolutely love industrial music. I'm like, oh, cool. It's good to not be on this island alone because so many people treat it like a dirty secret. And I'm like, man, I don't know about you, but that's sexy stuff.
Yeah. Music is too important to just to live in this little bitty club, where you're only allowed to hear one thing.
Yeah, it's like circle the herd and protect everybody and make sure that, nobody brings any kind of other influence in. I get it.
But do you know a band I've been in since I was a young kid? There's a German band called Einstürzende Neibauten.
Yeah, the ones that use machine guns as percussion.
Yeah, and all kinds of weird. But they're still around and they're amazing. And the bass player's a big ShackShakers fan. How
could you not be?
He loves country music even. Right. So I don't think it's so weird, And really the thing that was kind of motivating for me playing with JD was, he only listens to older music.
Right.
But we didn't see the point in recreating those records. And we love those records. I love rockabilly music. Me and Visca are going to a rockabilly gig tonight. I love that music, but why would you try and make a record that sounds like the Rock and Roll Trio? Because it's not going to be as good.
Yeah, there's one thing to pay tribute to your heroes, but there's another thing to do what the ShackShakers did, which was everybody had different influences and they came together and they made this really badass gumbo.
Well, I think that's what everyone should be trying to do.
Me too. I think that
I feel like some
people that, they enjoy being able to pay tribute to their heroes of the past. And, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, especially if you want to record it for posterity's sake. But we're never going to sound as good as them. We can give it the best shot that we can, but like you said, it's still going to be, a Dollar Tree comparison.
Yeah, well, take that music, take what you value from it,
mm-hmm.
and there's a lot to value from it. And then, but you still ultimately you have to tell your own story.
Yeah, it's absolutely in the same.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I say it's the same thing that anytime any person picks up a guitar, they're going to play something different. It doesn't matter who it is. The first thing that they play, it might be a chord, it might be a lick, it might be an arpeggio, it might be whatever, but it's going to be different. And when you can harness the literal energy of that and put it together as a band, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's I just think you get that hybrid of people into different things, and you might even from the inside find that annoying, but you're more likely to come up with something cool than if everybody just wants to sound like Gene Vincent, or whatever.
So it's all going to be based off of the same 12 notes. unless it's,
Right.
I mean, whether it's major or minor. And everybody can play inside of the same playground and bring their different influences in, but we already know this canvas that we can work with, and that's nice.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I feel like there's too many musicians spend their whole life trying to be somebody else. Trying to emulate their heroes, or tell someone else's story. When it's like, you know what I'm talking about. There's like somebody from Italy trying to sound like a hillbilly from Mississippi or something. You like your story is so much better.
It's certainly different and richer in its own way. And I imagine that, the more you can harness your own life experiences, the more it really comes out in your playing, which, good Lord, if that doesn't happen with, I'd say 90% of the music that I listen to, people came from bumpkin towns where all they had was their imagination. But also I said there's something to be said for being able to pay tribute to your musical heroes in a carbon copy way, because that's not easy to do. But yet at the same time, I think that if that's what makes them happy, that's what makes them happy. But you might be depriving the world of something really cool and original. Well, if you have any audio plugs or any websites or addresses, now's the time to lay them out, brother.
Well, all the David Graham stuff is at EskimoBrothers.net, and he posts all his tour dates, and that's if you are brave enough to want to hear some of my electronic stuff. It's called the Snipe Catcher, all one word, and it's on all the streaming platforms and Bandcamp and iTunes and all that stuff, and those are the main things for right now.
Killer, man. Well,
and if you see if you get to see the new ShackShakers lineup, go do it, because they're starting to kick ass again.
I'm going to be fortunate if they get this way. I'm definitely going to make it. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Well, let's stay in touch privately once we get off air, and I'm curious to get caught up a little better on your life.
Right on.
Saying, we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. We'll stay safe on the road while you're out there.
Yes, sir.
Safe travels back to the States when you get there. And, dude,
yes,
it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, man. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, take care of yourself. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, bye.
All right. That'll be all for today. Remember, peace, love throughout the world, and don't forget to rock and roll.